The 12th of June, 1944, low sky over the Normandy hedgerows, Lieutenant Markus Feldner sits at 3,000 meters in an FW-190, a throttle settled just under combat power, fuel already down to the point where every minute in the air is. A minute he will have to pay for later. His breathing is still steady. In through the nose for 4 counts. Hold, out through the teeth. He can feel his own pulse in the leather under his gloves, not panicked, just present a metronome. Manifold pressure is good. Cylinder head temp is good. Guns are live. The supercharger hum is smooth, and even in his headset a disciplined, controlled whine. That sound is order. That sound means he still owns his space. Then the sky tears. The first burst doesn't sound like gunfire. It sounds like metal being ripped apart right behind his shoulders, 8 heavy Brownings from somewhere off his high left hosing the air around him in a flat, murderous sheet. Half a second of that, and there's no cockpit left. Half a second, and there's no pilot left. He doesn't see the shooter yet. He just hears that noise and knows in a place below language that if that line of fire touches him for even a blink, he stops existing. Skill is supposed to be a shield. Skill is supposed to buy time. That sound says skill might not even buy one more breath. He forces his hands to stay precise on the stick. Don't snatch, don't flinch, don't yank. He rolls shallow controlled the way he was taught, not the panicked snap of a green flyer, but a measured bank that keeps his lift vector alive. Fuel check. He has enough to run for the river then, maybe home if he doesn't fight long. Fuel is not range anymore. Fuel is how many more minutes am I allowed to stay alive in this sky. He tastes hot oil in the air coming up through the footwell vents and feels vibration through the rudder pedals, that fine, steady buzz of a healthy engine. That's the world he trusts. Numbers, gauges, discipline. Heart rate about 1 to 10, vision clear, breath under control. The math still says he can influence the fight. In the back of his mind, the oath repeats itself the way a prayer repeats itself in a church that's already burning. I will never be the first to dive away. I will never abandon the fight. That promise is the last clean thing he owns. The fear underneath it is dirtier, smaller, more honest, not fear of dying, not really fear of being erased. Spinning down in fire over some hedgerow where no one will even have time to mark the spot because the column on the road below is already being strafed and burned and strafed again. A nameless plume, a forgotten spiral. Radio comes alive in his ear, not German. Flat American English Midwestern edges sanded off by the intercom. Jug, 2, clear your nose and rake that tree line. We're not done here. Reload cycle in 90 and we're back up. No celebration, no drama, just a schedule. As if the ripping wall of 50 caliber he just heard is not a duel at all, it's a service being provided on time. They used to laugh at American fighters. Flying oil drum, lumbering pig, thick-skinned junk. The older men said it with that tired superiority that sounds like experience and feels like reassurance. The Thunderbolt, they would say, is not a knife fighter. It's a bludgeon, too heavy to turn with a proper hunter, too blunt to dance, too crude to belong in a clean duel between professionals. You hear that for long enough, and you start to believe in a certain order to the air war. You start to believe in fairness dressed up as physics. You start to believe that a refined tool in refined hands can't lose to a tool that was never refined at all. Normandy is where that story stops sounding like truth. Under a sheet of stained canvas and an evening lamp that keeps flickering in the wind, Krauss is bent over Feldner's BTU-190, like a man trying to keep a violin alive in a scrapyard. The cowl is off. The gun access panel is lying in the grass with 2 screws already stripped. The leading edge around the cannon port is heat-burned black. He doesn't fix it. He corrects it. He shaves the tiniest burr off the cannon mount so recoil doesn't walk the rounds high and right. He files the latch rail so the cowling will shut without whistling at combat power. He wipes carbon from the muzzle because a fouling note in the logbook will ground this airframe for inspection. And inspection equals time, and time equals not flying, and not flying equals losing. His shoulders are tight from hours of crouching and working at odd angles. His fingertips are black and shaking. He's not keeping a machine running. He's preserving an instrument. The logic around him assumes that this instrument must survive at all costs, because this specific airframe, in this specific pilot's hands, is a weapon that can still tilt a fight. Across the hedgerows, on an American advance strip, scraped out of a French field, that still smells like wet hay and spilled avgas, Brooks doesn't even pretend to be saving anything. One Thunderbolt limps in with holes in the wing root and hydraulic fluid streaked down the gear door. Brooks looks at it for maybe 5 seconds, then waves it off with a thumb jerk like he's telling someone to park a truck behind the barn. He's already signaling a tow jeep toward a different Thunderbolt that's fueled, loaded, and sitting nose out. That one's cold. This one's hot. Feed belts. Top him. Pilot in 5. Roll. He talks like loading dock math. He doesn't sound like someone guarding a rare asset. He sounds like someone meeting a timetable. The damaged jug is not a tragedy, and it's not a patient. It's just a frame. If it flies again, fine. If it becomes a donor for parts, also fine. The point is that another nearly identical brute is going to be airborne almost immediately with 50 seconds, ready to rake anything German still moving on those roads below. That is the split. Not their airplane turns worse than ours, or our climb rate at this altitude is superior. The split is philosophical. One side is built on the religion of irreplaceable skill. The other side is built on the comfort of replaceable force. Feldner was raised, trained, flown, briefed on the promise that perfection is protection. Fly perfectly, shoot precisely, maintain your airframe like a jewel, and you earn survival. Survival is the moral payment for discipline. But look at the workload behind that promise. Look at Krauss with his lamp sculpting one cannon mount by hand, because a half-degree deviation at 200 meters means the burst won't kill with the first pull. Look at the way every panel line on that few 190 gets worried over like a cracked rib. Look at the way they talk about a single airframe like it's a named creature. Then look at Brooks. Brooks is not nursing anything. Brooks is moving inventory. On the radio net, Adler is supposed to be the ice in the middle of the fire. That's his job. Calm headings, calm altitude calls, clip clean, factual. 2 bandits north-northwest, 3,000 closing. It's supposed to sound like that. But when the American guns come in again, that ugly ripping roar that doesn't even register as guns anymore, more like sheet metal being fed into a grinder, Adler's rhythm stutters. Just for half a breath. Break left, now. The repeat, the stack of now, the way the last one spikes high and thin in his throat, it's not rage. Rage would be cleaner. It's strain. He's trying to shepherd pilots who were taught to fight duels in a sky where duels don't exist anymore. He's calling geometry in a storm of blunt force. Inside Feldner's cockpit, nothing looks panicked if you freeze the frame, but watch him in motion and you can see the fracture lines. Earlier in the day, his scan was crisp and elegant. Fuel horizon sun line, 6 o'clock, canopy check, gun sight glass repeat. Each movement the same, each breath metered in 4 counts, the supercharger hum in his ears like a tuning fork. Now the scan is fast and uneven. Fuel, mirror, left shoulder, altimeter sag, canopy frame crack. Right quarter, back to fuel again. He's grinding his molars so hard he tastes blood. His breathing keeps catching in his throat every time that American sound hits the air, that savage, grinding wall of 50 caliber fire, even when it's not aimed at him. His hands are still steady on the stick if you describe them in words. In reality, the tendons in his forearm are standing out like cables. And underneath all of it, the math is changing definitions. Fuel is no longer endurance. Fuel is time left to be alive. Ammunition is no longer burst discipline. Ammunition is the enemy's timer on your heartbeat, how many half-seconds of that wall of fire they can still afford to spend killing you before they have to go home. Bursts from a Thunderbolt's 850s aren't just firepower. To Feldner, they're flashes of a clock. Half a second in that cone and you're gone. Another half second for your wingman. Another half second for the flak crew you were trying to protect. The American pilot doesn't have to be an artist. He just has to hold you inside that clock. That is where the betrayal really lives. The betrayal is not, they outturned me. The betrayal is, they don't care if they lose one airplane because another airplane will take its place in minutes, and I am being told my whole worth is tied to keeping this single machine and this single set of hands alive. The creed he was given says, "Survive through mastery." Normandy shows him, mastery is slow, mastery is delicate, mastery requires Kraus under a tarp with a file and a prayer. Normandy shows him what Brooks already knows in his bones. You don't have to win a duel if you can just keep sending hammers to the same spot until the other side stops existing. So, when the veterans call the Thunderbolt thick-skinned, trash-flying, oil-drum clumsy brute, it doesn't land the way it used to. Thick-skinned trash can, take hits, land, get swapped out, and be back over the same hedgerow, beating the same column into the dirt within an hour. The elegant hunter needs rest, fuel a mechanic's full attention and luck. The elegant hunter needs time. Time is the one commodity the Luftwaffe no longer controls. The result is simple and cruel. The thing Feldner was promised would save him perfection is turning into the thing that kills him, because perfection can't be manufactured fast enough to keep him from being alone in this sky. The 12th of June, 1944 over the bocage, and for a moment the war still pretends to be fair. Feldner's FAVU 190 drops into the attack the way he was trained, smooth and disciplined, not reckless. He doesn't just dive in and start clawing. He steals a sliver of altitude, first rolls over controlled and tight, and then slides down behind the American fighter in a shallow rear quarter. The Thunderbolt in front of him is heavy and broad, and bleeding speed in a lazy turn, trying to muscle its way around rather than dance. 200 meters. That's killing range. At that distance, cannon shells don't just punch holes, they open a man and end the argument. His gun sight ring sits perfectly over the American's tail. He can see the oil streaks under the canopy rail. He can see a rough field patch near the wing root where someone beat metal back into place with no elegance at all. He can almost see the pilot's helmet. His thumb is already easing pressure onto the trigger. This is everything he was promised. Get to this position, fire one, clean burst, break away, live. The air explodes to his right. It's not polite gunfire. It's not a tapping burst the way his own cannons sound in practice. It's a savage, ripping noise, like someone is tearing a steel plate in half 2 meters from his ear. His whole cockpit flashes white on the right side from muzzle fire that isn't his. The sound isn't even in rhythm. It just roars and soars, a blunt flood of heavy rounds chewing the sky. Instinct yanks his eyes that way, even though every lesson he's ever been taught says never take your eyes off the target in the last split second. His sight picture drifts. The perfect line he had on the Thunderbolt's tail flickers. The kill he had earned with clean positioning is interrupted, not because he made a mistake, but because the other side simply threw another fighter into the same space without warning. Then a second Thunderbolt cuts across his nose from high left to low right, not even trying to turn with him, just dumping a curtain of .50 caliber fire across his path to knock him off balance. Tracers slash in front of his prop arc. Air hammers against his canopy. He jinks to keep from flying straight into that stream, and in that moment loses the clean rear position he'd just built. A third shape is already climbing up from below his left wing, sliding toward his belly like a jack being cranked under a car. The geometry that belonged to him a heartbeat ago doesn't belong to him anymore. He was hunting one target. Now he's inside a feeding circle. He reacts by reflex. Rudder roll shallow brake to spoil their shot. He tries to turn their angles into energy and climb out of their overlapping fire. That move should have been decisive in a one-on-one. It's what he was taught, force the other pilot to overshoot, make him choose between keeping position and bleeding too much speed, then finish him when he's alone. But none of these Americans are letting themselves get isolated. Every time he claws space to line up again, another Thunderbolt slams more of that ripping gunfire across his exit lane and forces him to bend off course. They aren't trying to duel him. They're occupying every patch of air he reaches for. His brain stops thinking in pride, words like turn rate, and starts thinking in minutes. He knows how much fuel he has left. He knows how long that fuel will last at combat power. He doesn't measure it as distance home anymore. He measures it as life. 3 minutes, maybe 4, before he has to point east and run for the river and the line of German guns and any kind of safety. 3 minutes is not range. 3 minutes is this is how long I am allowed to still be breathing. Every hard pull on the stick drains that number. Every defensive break burns seconds he will beg for later when he tries to run. The fuel gauge in the corner of his eye has stopped being an instrument and become a countdown. He tries to reset anyway because the habit is inside his hands. Nose up, roll hard, climb just enough to force one of them to follow him alone. If he can peel one Thunderbolt out of the cluster, just one, he can bring the sight ring back onto a single tail and finish this properly. For a moment it almost starts to work. One American fighter dips low and lags behind. Another flattens out and falls off his high quarter. The one he first chased drifts just far enough ahead that it looks exposed again. The window opens for barely the length of a single breath. Then the air rips apart behind his left shoulder, closer than before, so close he feels the vibration through the armor plate at his back. Tracers knife past his canopy bow and flick down his right wing. The sound is physical, a pressure wave punching his ribs. His pupils snap off the shot and start cutting to the threat, then back, then to the next threat, then back. Little fast eye movements he can't fully control. His breath jumps and won't settle. He was breathing slow, and even when the attack began. Now every exhale is a ragged shove through clenched teeth. His jaw is locked so tight he tastes his own blood where he's chewed the inside of his cheek raw. His shoulders have climbed up toward his ears and hardened his neck, choking his airflow even more. On paper, he's still in control. In his own body, control is already leaking. His trigger finger should be calm. Smooth squeeze, half-second burst surgical. That's how he was trained. Fire only when you can kill. Waste nothing. Instead, there's a tremor at the last joint. Tiny. Embarrassing. Deadly. The gun sight ring, which was steady a minute ago, starts to wobble just enough to smear his aim off the Thunderbolt's vital lines and into empty air. He knows exactly what that means. He can feel discipline rotting in his own hand while he's still trying to use it. He tells himself to hold his nerve. He tells himself this is salvageable. But the truth is already obvious in the way the Americans are flying. They are not letting him finish a clean engagement. They're not staying in front of his guns long enough to be duelled and beaten. They're rotating through him one after another, one throwing fire to block his nose, one spitting a wall of tracers across the space he's about to occupy, one shoving him down toward the hedgerows, and the flak, and the trees. None of them cares about staying graceful. None of them cares about honor. The point is pressure. Constant pressure. Endless pressure. He finally yanks out, not elegantly, just violently, because staying means dying. The FDU-190 shudders and chatters as he drags it through filthy prop wash and churned air, the wings groaning, the whole airframe buzzing like it's being hit with a hammer. He feels warmth running down his temple, and only later will realize it's from where he tore his cheek open with his own teeth. There is no triumph in this break. There isn't even anger yet. There's just calculation. I am not dead right now. If I run immediately, maybe I live long enough to see the river. And that is the cut that goes deeper than fear. He didn't fail. He didn't flinch. He set up the attack perfectly, just like they told him. He got into the position that guarantees a kill in the old world. He nearly ended an American fighter at perfect range. He did his job. The Americans didn't outfly him. They smothered him. They took his earned shot and drowned it in overlapping fire and extra airframes until his skill stopped mattering. All that discipline, all that training, all that control, it still leads to the same place. Not victory. Just the privilege of dying slightly later. The moment comes low over the hedgerows, where the fields are cut into box shapes by sunken lanes and tree lines, and smoke is already hanging in the air from burning trucks. Feldner is too low for comfort, and he knows it. He's down in the kind of air where ground fire can reach up and pluck you out of the cockpit with a lucky burst, and every turn costs more fuel than he can afford. His element is strung out and ragged, two German fighters that were supposed to be a tight pair, now stretched and bleeding energy in dirty sky. He can hear his wingman breathing hard over the radio, small clipped breaths that keep cutting in with the static of the set. He wants to pull them higher reset, get some altitude back, and make this fight honest again. Honest means angles and energy and nerve. Honest means 2 against 1. Honest does not exist here anymore. The Americans are still here. Of course they're still here. He can't even tell if it's the same Thunderbolts from the last pass or fresh ones rotated in. That's part of the sickness, the way they appear like a continuation of the same machine rather than individual pilots. He drags his 190 through a shallow climbing turn to the right, trying to keep speed, trying not to bleed the tank dry when the air behind him comes apart so loud and so close, it feels like his spine is being sawed. Heavy guns right on top of him, so near that the sound doesn't arrive as noise from a direction. It arrives as pressure slamming through the seat armor and into his body. The canopy flashes in hard white pulses. Tracers rake past the left side of his nose and flick past his wingtip, bright orange streaks cutting the air he's about to fly through if he holds his line for even a fraction too long. That's not a warning shot. That's killing range. He doesn't have seconds. He has fractions of seconds. He should pull hard and snap roll away on instinct, but snapping like that at this height can kill you just as quickly as enemy fire. A hard break this low can stall the wing, snap you inverted and send you straight into a hedgerow. He knows that. He also knows something else, something worse. His wingman is still on his right, rear quarter, hanging on, trusting him, waiting for him to lead them out. All the lines drilled into his bones say stay together, keep discipline, don't scatter, never give the enemy a free chase on a separated aircraft. Stay composed, stay lethal, stay proud. That's what makes you different than the blunt animals trying to club you out of the sky. He keys the radio and hears his own voice before he's even aware he's made the decision. Break, break now. Down, 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 go down. It rips out of him raw, louder than it needs to be, and the second the words are out, something in his chest tears. He hears himself, and he knows exactly what he just did. He didn't say hold. He didn't say stay tight. He didn't say follow me. He told his wingman to dive. Not a controlled disengagement, not a disciplined high-speed extension, a dive, a drop, a run for the deck. Every instructor he ever respected would have called that the first step toward being prey. He ordered it anyway. The effect inside his own body is immediate and violent. His heart rate doesn't just climb, it slams. He can feel the thud of it in his throat, in his gums, in the corners of his eyes. His breathing shears into fast, ugly gasps that scrape the back of his throat raw. The air suddenly tastes like metal and burned oil. His vision tightens hard colors, tunneling down until the world outside the canopy is no longer a broad horizontal view of fields and smoke and flashes and sun glare, but a narrowing red-black circle like he's looking through a puff, blood-ringed tube. His hands, which even a few minutes ago were smooth and precise on the stick, go hard and stiff. He's not guiding the airplane anymore so much as hanging onto it. The dive almost kills him. When he shoves the nose down, the airframe shudders and chatters like a sheet of tin being shaken, and the hedgerows rush up, brutal and fast. He has to fight every instinct not to yank too hard, not to pull out too early, and serve himself up to the guns now above him. Trees whip past in a green-brown blur. Earth fills half the canopy. The slipstream screams along the canopy frame, and the engine note goes from steady power to a strained, high metallic howl. His eyes are watering so hard from the pressure change that the world dances in a wet shimmer. There is no elegance in any of this. There is no craft. There is only animal force, get low, get out live. And under that, deeper than fear, comes something he didn't think he was capable of feeling in the air: humiliation. Not anger at the Americans, not hatred of the men in those Thunderbolts. Humiliation at himself. He told someone who trusted him to run. He told someone who trusted him to scatter. He told someone under his protection to do the one thing he swore he would never order: break formation and dive for survival. He can tell himself that it was the only move that would keep them breathing. He can tell himself that you can't fight 3 or 4 of those big brutes when they're stacked like that, all spitting fire from different angles, without altitude, without fuel, without time. He can even tell himself that living to fly tomorrow is more valuable than dying beautifully today. All of those thoughts are true. None of them make it feel less like surrender. The radios are chaos. He can hear someone, probably Adler, yelling headings, altitude calls, warnings. 2 more incoming from the west, low, low. The words blur together in static and breath and strain. There's no calm control voice anymore, not like in the training recordings. It all sounds hot, urgent, cracked. He thinks he hears his wingman grunt through clenched teeth as he yanks down and away. He thinks he hears the rattle of rounds hitting dirt somewhere behind him, chewing up a hedgerow where they were a heartbeat earlier. He thinks for one awful second that he hears a scream. Then it's gone in the noise. The part of him that built his whole identity on being the cold hunter, the man who outflies, outthinks, outshoots, takes a perfect firing position at 200 meters and ends fights with one burst. That part is dying faster than his. Fuel. He can feel it. That version of himself doesn't work here. That version only exists in the stories the older pilots told, in the way the squadron talked about duels, in the way the mechanics talked about our machine, like it was a blade forged for a single hand. Down here, under this kind of constant hammering from above, with these American fighters arriving one after another like factory parts, those stories are fiction. The sky does not care how refined you are. The sky cares how fast the next gun platform can be over the road. He levels out just above the treetops, engines screaming, eyes burning, mouth open, and dragging air like a drowning man. His hands are shaking now. Not a noble tremble, a real shake. The kind you get when the body is past the edge and running on whatever instinct is left. He blinks hard to clear his vision, and for a moment he can see the fields ahead. Black scars where convoys burned, smoke lying flat, flashes of tracers walking into a line of hedges where German infantry are trying to move. The Americans are still up there. He knows they're still up there. He can feel them like weather. And he understands something ugly and permanent. He is not the deciding factor in this fight. His personal skill is not the thing holding this line together. He can fly perfectly, shoot perfectly, make perfect choices, and all it buys him is a slightly slower death unless he runs. The sky above Normandy is no longer a dueling ground where the best pilot wins. It's a production floor. The other side can just keep sending more steel. His refusal to break used to be pride. Now it's suicide. And that knowledge lands in him not as strategy, not as doctrine, but as shame. Shame that the role he trained for, the identity he believed in Hunter Guard professional necessary, has already gone extinct while his heart is still punching at his ribs, begging to stay in his chest. The field is quiet in the way battlefields get quiet, not peaceful, just emptied. Smoke hanging low, a line of hedgerows still smouldering where somebody's convoy cooked off. A ditch full of blackened metal that used to be a truck. You can hear flies already. You can hear distant engines. You can hear boots in wet dirt. Feldner is walking, stiff helmet off, hair plastered to his forehead, with sweat and fuel mist flight jacket unzipped at the throat because he still can't quite catch full air. The 190 is parked crooked behind him, cowl open panels hanging loose like torn fingernails. Kraus is already on it with both hands, cursing softly in that calm, furious way men curse when they're doing surgery in a barn. Kruger stands a few meters off, smoking down to the filter like he doesn't remember lighting it. Nobody is talking to Feldner yet. They're letting him walk. The American fighter sits 20 meters into the field, nose down in soft earth tail, slightly canted, one main gear snapped. It didn't burn. That's the shocking part. It's punched up dirt and ripped its prop blades into twisted paddles, and the pilot is already gone, dragged out or walked away. No one's sure, but the airframe itself is mostly intact. Ugly intact. The way a brick wall is intact after a car slams into it. Feldner stops next to it and just looks. Up close, the thing is even worse than the jokes made it sound. The skin is thick and brutal, more like a boiler shell than a fighter's hide. You can see where some crew chief hammered a crude patch over a previous hole and sealed it with whatever was handy paint slapped over it in a different tone, no effort to blend. The leading edge is scarred. The wing roots are filthy. Oil has blown back along the fuselage in greasy fans. There's no grace in the lines. Nothing about it says thoroughbred. It looks like a weapon built by people who did not care if it was beautiful so long as it could keep spitting fire and come home in one piece. He reaches out and runs his glove along the side where the armor curves around the cockpit. It's not smooth. It's pitted and warm, and still smells like hot oil and cordite. His thumb bumps over a row of rivets that look like they were driven in by someone with a hammer and a deadline. There are scuffs and impact marks, and smeared black where rounds hit and didn't go through. You can follow a trail where something big and fast struck, and then skipped away without cracking the frame. He can feel through the leather how thick that plating is. His own machine back there on the grass flies like a knife. This one flies like a door torn off a bank vault and given an engine. Kruger comes up beside him and stands there in silence for a long moment. You'd expect anger from him. You'd expect something like spit and venom and pride, some line about, "Next time we'll," or they think they can. But he doesn't say that. He just exhales smoke and studies the wreck like it's a problem set. When he finally talks, his voice is low and flat, like a man reading inventory instead of giving a speech. "Look at this," he says. "Look at how they treat it. They didn't even bother fairing the patch. They didn't even bother cleaning the seams. They expect it to get torn up and go back out anyway." Feldner answers without looking away. "They don't need to save the ace," he says. Not loud, not dramatic, just saying it aloud to hear how it sounds in real air instead of in his own head. They just have to keep pressure in the sky. The words land like metal hitting dirt. They don't ring, they thud. He's not confessing fear. He's admitting structure. He's naming the shape of what nearly killed him. Kraus calls from behind them, not lifting his head from the TEF 190's open guts. His voice carries that tired edge, that end of rope rasp you get when you've been awake too long doing work that matters less every hour. "Do you know what I had to do just to get your cannon true again this morning?" he says. "Do you know how long I spent on that feed tray? You saw me. You were standing right there. I tuned every millimeter of that line. I polished the carbon off by hand so the inspector wouldn't ground the gun. You get one line off and command starts yelling about discipline and care and pride. And them," he jerks his chin at the Thunderbolt in the field. "They just pull another one out of the row and send it up. No lecture, no ritual, just up. That hits harder than any insult. Because underneath everything, underneath all the talk about honor and instinct and elite skill, and hunters underneath all the swagger and cigarette smoke and tight little grins in the briefing room, the whole Luftwaffe fighter idea runs on. Emotion. You pour years of training into one man. You polish him until he's sharper than anyone else in the sky. You hand him a machine that's been babied and tuned by ground crew who treat that airframe like a living relic. You convince everyone involved that this pairing is special, irreplaceable, necessary. You build a religion around it, and you tell yourself that because it's rare, because it's sacred, it will hold. He's standing in front of proof that the other side does not believe in that religion at all. They don't romanticize a single pilot. They don't protect an individual machine like it's a violin. They built this thing to take hits, throw fire, land ugly, get patched with whatever is in reach, get refueled, get ammo slammed back into its wings and go right back up. If it can't, they'll drag out the next one. And the next. And the next. The pressure never drops. Pressure itself is the weapon. Feldner keeps his hand on the Thunderbolt's skin for a second longer, like he's trying to understand it through touch. The armor feels like an insult and an explanation at the same time. The crude rivets feel like a shrug. The oil streaks feel like handwriting. I don't have to be pretty. I just have to still be here. He catches himself, clenching his jaw again, and forces it to unlock. His mouth tastes like old blood and engine fumes. His head is still buzzing from the dive, and there's a dull ache beating behind his eyes from the way his vision tunneled in the air. He realizes all at once that what hurts the most is not almost dying. What hurts most is realizing that the thing he nearly died, defending the belief that his individual skill mattered enough to bend the day, might already be gone. Kruger flicks what's left of his cigarette into the dirt. He doesn't look at Feldner when he says it. "This is what I didn't want to say in front of them," he mutters. "We spent years telling you to be perfect because perfection keeps you alive. That was true when a handful of us could slow an entire sector. That was true when they had to come to us in small numbers. It's not true anymore. Now perfection just takes longer to replace. That's all it is. Longer to replace." Feldner doesn't argue. What is there to argue? He can see the answer sitting in front of him, nose buried in French soil like some heavy animal that charged, killed what it needed to kill, and then simply ran out of steps. It looks brutal. It looks scarred. It looks cheap and unstoppable. He looks back over his shoulder at his own fighter panels, hanging open Kraus's hands, already black up to the wrists, delicate tools laid out like surgical instruments on a rag. One of these machines demands devotion. The other demands fuel and ammunition. The quiet settles again. You can hear insects now. You can hear distant artillery like someone drumming on sheet metal far off. You can hear the wind moving smoke sideways over the field. Feldner lets out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He feels suddenly sharply older than he did that morning. Not tired, used. Spent. Spent, in the way an idea gets spent. He understands that his hours in the air are now being measured like ammunition, not like legacy. That is the part that hollows him out. Years of training, all the ritual, all the talk about nerves of steel and clean shooting, all the lectures about being the thin blade guarding the western sky burned down in a single afternoon by something that looks like a factory. Product. Not beaten in a duel. Consumed by pace. Ground down by repetition. That's the cost. The cost isn't just wrecked metal and dead men in hedgerows. The cost is emotional waste. All that belief. All that pride. All that investment poured into one pilot and one machine erased in minutes by an enemy who doesn't bother pretending any of it matters. Night settles in slow over the field. The last light hangs low and orange over the treetops, and the sky above Normandy is no longer full of engines, just a far-distant hum like traffic on a road you can't see. Feldner sits on an ammo crate with his back against the landing gear of his own fighter. His flight jacket is still unzipped. His hair is still stuck to his forehead. His hands are finally steady, but they don't feel like his. He's not replaying the turns and merges in his head anymore. He's not thinking, if I had rolled sooner, if I had bled a little less speed, if I had pressed the shot 1/2 second earlier. That used to be the ritual. After every sortie you sit and you rerun the fight and you edit it into a version where you win. You tell yourself next time you'll do it that way. That habit is gone. For the first time since he earned his wings, he is no longer treating the day like a duel that just barely slipped away. He is treating it like something else entirely. He is not angry at the Americans for being better pilots. He knows they weren't. Some of them flew like axes thrown from a truck bed. He watched them skid and wallow and muscle through turns like they were trying to drag farm machinery through the air. But it didn't matter. They didn't need elegance. They arrived in layers. When one of them lost position, another one slid in. When one of them ran low on ammunition, another one was already cutting across the lane with guns still full. When one of them broke off, damaged a fresh one showed up overhead as if it had been waiting on a hook. They didn't beat him in a fight. They made the idea of a fight meaningless. He has to say it to himself in plain terms or it won't land. The Americans did not outfly us. They outlasted us. They did not outduel us. They strangled the duel. Their planes could take hits and come back. Our planes had to be kept perfect and prayed over. Their ground crews could spin up another armed monster in under an hour. Our ground crews bled themselves out just to return one airframe to service after it took a few cannon strikes. Their pilots could get shot up land, hand the seat to someone else, and that same airframe or its twin or its twin's twin would be back in the same piece of sky before our fuel gauges even climbed back into the green. Ours could not. When you strip away pride and habit and myth that is the shape of the truth, by the end of 1944, it isn't turn rate that decides who owns the air. It isn't climb angle. It isn't who can hold his nerve longest in a head-on pass. It's this: how fast can another armed American machine be put over the target after you just killed the last one? Not tomorrow. Not next sortie. Right now. Hour by hour. Sector by sector. It has become a timing problem, not a talent problem. They can answer that timing problem. We can't. He realizes, with a kind of cold clarity, that you could be the best hunter in Europe, and it would not matter if the sky replaces the thing you just shot down faster than you can climb out of your own dive. His core fear used to be dying forgotten, a smear of fire in a hedgerow that no one even marks on a map. That fear is still there, but something worse has grown next to it. The worst part is this: it might not even matter anymore if he dies. The line will not bend or break because one skilled pilot is gone. It won't pause. It won't gasp. It won't register. The pressure will keep coming because the pressure is now the weapon. He is not the weapon. He is a consumable. He sits there listening to Kraus curse at a stuck fastener and listening to Kruger grind out the last of a cigarette, and he understands fully that the old story is finished. The story where a handful of perfect men in perfect machines can hold back an army by force of will is done. The sky has turned into an assembly line. He can hate it, but he can't deny it. He closes his eyes for a moment and lets the final shape of it settle, clean and sharp and cruel. Perfection can win a duel. Availability wins a war. And by late 44, availability was airborne and hunting us.